Hello, everybody. We are live. Welcome to the session today. We have a great session planned. It's Meet the New Pardot Developer Experience, and we have Christopher Cornett from Salesforce Pardot. We hope everybody will enjoy the presentation. You can use the chat to ask questions during the session, but we'll wait until the end to really answer anything if the crowd doesn't already answer questions before the end of the session. So I'm going to pass it over to Christopher to take it away.
Thank you so much, Amber. So everyone, I'm really excited today to be able to talk to you about Pardot's new developer experience. And so today I'm going to be covering a little bit about what we have been focusing on in order to improve the overall experience for people who want to expand and also innovate with Pardot. Next, we'll do a quick interview with a self-proclaimed app king who's going to talk about their experience using this to build an application. And then afterwards, we're going to walk through his experience, going through the materials that he used to learn, and also do a live coding session to show you how he built his application. Now, our old experience left a little bit to be desired, but that's not what I'm here to talk about today. I'm here to talk about what we have been focusing on. And so that falls into three key areas. The first is functionality. Being able to have the capabilities to expand Pardot and be able to integrate it with other applications. And on this side, we really focused on a couple of things. We've delivered custom components, which makes building emails easier than ever by being able to pull in outside data or have specialized types of components. We've also delivered external activity, which now allows you to push in prospect engagement data into Pardot that occur in external systems, so you can really up-level your automation game. And then lastly, we've also been working on renovating our API and expanding it so it's easier than ever to use. And also you now have access to more Pardot functionality with the API. But all of the functionality in the world doesn't matter if you don't know how to use it. So we've equally been focused on up-leveling our training and documentation. So we've been adding more information and specifications, adding more high-level information so you can put it all in context, so you have use cases, end-to-end developer guides, and much more that I'll talk about. And then finally, you need a place to develop. And so for ISVs, we have delivered a developer environment that they can use to build their apps. And for customers, we have sandboxes that allow them a safe place to be able to test and develop their applications. And so now I'm going to pass it or introduce our special guest who we're interviewing today, which is Matt Fastra, the self-proclaimed app king and motivational speaker. He couldn't be live today, so I had to pre-record this. Shocking, I know, but let's just jump into that interview right now. I have the pleasure today of talking with Matt Fastra, the app king. Matt, would you like to introduce yourself?
All righty. How is everybody doing today? Good. My name is Matt Fastra, and let me tell you a little scenario about myself. I'm 35 years old, a former engineer, and I coded in a band down by the river.
Well, Matt, I hear the story of how you became the app king and then a motivational speaker is truly inspiring. How did you come up with your app idea?
Well, Chris, I was just fired from my job and I was carrying my boxes down the road when a light bulb hit me.
Oh, so you had one of those eureka moments.
No. A light bulb fell off a street lamp and knocked me unconscious. While I was in the coma in the hospital, I had a dream. Why not remind people while they're getting emails?
Well, that is hard to believe. Anyway, how did you get started on your idea? You told me previously that you knew nothing about Pardot.
No, it is true. I have never heard of Pardot before. So what did I do? What everyone does. I asked Jeeves it. And first thing that pops up is the Pardot Developer Documentation. Their specifications, use case guides, trails, even a Postman collection. Go, got you.
Okay, so you now know what you can do. So what was your next step?
Well, Chris, I was like a kid in a candy store after eating 60 espressos. I played around so much with that API, I basically learned it and had so much fun. And then by morning, I pretty much had my app done.
Wow, that is incredible. So you have your app done. How do you get it launched?
The partner community was excellent. My SDR and associate account manager guided me through everything. It was super simple. Helped me with my business plan. It was great.
Well, that's really great to hear. What was your favorite part about the program?
Well, as my father probably told you, Matt makes a lot of oopsies. Well, that's why I really appreciated the security review, having somebody look at my back.
That's very true. These are critical systems. So is this when you declare yourself the app king?
Oh, golly, no, Chris. That would be putting the hair in front of the carrot. No, as my app got more successful, I was brought into tons of Salesforce deals. I was highlighted in the Trailblazers. Plus, I got this speaking gig.
So when in all of this did you become the app king?
Let me just say, Chris, because of my app success, I now code in an Escalade down by the river.
Well, that was an incredible story and certainly intriguing. Thank you, App King Matt. Any last words for our audience today?
Thank you for being my first motivational speaking opportunity. You too can be just like me. Please join.
Matt, we talked about this. You can't do that. This is all publicly available information.
Will you just shut your trap, Chris? As I was saying, you too can be like me. Just sign up for my workshop. Now you too can code in an Escalade.
Okay, Matt, that was an experience. Please, no one sign up for whatever that was. Everything he talked about is available on our developer documentation. I also will provide a link later on for the partner community in this session. So now I'm going to turn it back over to live Chris. I have the pleasure today of talking with Matt. 1 second. How do I? Matt Fastra, the app king. Matt, would you like to? Sorry about that, y'all. Don't know what happened there. But I guess it's not a live speaking session if there's not a little bit of a hiccup. All right, so basically, we heard it all. So let's walk through Matt's experience. But before that, I think y'all should know that I love improv, so that's why I try to work it in. And you might actually find it a little bit surprising that none of my colleagues were really willing to jump into that sketch. But let's walk through Matt's experience here. So first off, he said he asked Jeeves it. So let's give that a go. So I typed in Pardot Developer Documentation. The first link is our API guides, which is great. And you'll notice that this is new. This looks different than our developer documentation used to. Why? It's because we're now on developer.salesforce.com. So we're in the same place as all the other technical information you need if you work across Salesforce products. And we've also worked hard to try to make this a one-stop shop of information for Pardot specifically. So when we click into the guides, I jump to version 5 and just want to call out that you're going to see this expand more. And it has been expanding release over release. Version 5 is really our new version for all customers and is going to provide you a much easier experience because it it adapts or it leverages REST principles that allow you access to a ton of tools. And so Matt used this to understand what was on the version 5. But he was new, so he needed to get started from the baseline. So he was really appreciative that there was a getting started guide that includes some trails that take you from the basics to your first call. And so he was even able to get to a point where he had some examples that he could use in Apex that allows him to be able to make requests to the Pardot API. So now he has all this knowledge and he has the puzzle pieces, but how does he put the full puzzle together? He was really happy to see use cases that showed him ideas of how these different endpoints can connect into an overall use case. But not only that, he also found a developer guide for email builder extensibility that gives kind of an end-to-end walkthrough of how to do email templates and all the relevant information, and also custom components. And then also there is a guide of how to systematically set up external activity, which is going to be appealing to any developer who's going to use this in multiple orgs, because you want to ensure you know what those activity types are that you're coding against, versus requiring an admin who may potentially put an error in, and then the application would look broken. And then also, so now he has the knowledge, he has the picture, now he needs experience. And so he goes to the ISV Getting Started guide that tells him all about the program, how to sign up for the partner community, and ultimately get a Pardot developer environment. And then he also checks out the other resources and is really excited to see that there is a Postman collection available for V5 that's going to allow him to jump in really quickly. Now, if you haven't heard of Postman, it is an API platform, and a lot of people use it because it makes testing and getting your hands into an API really simple. What's great is just from this site alone, you can do a few configurations, request the OAuth token, do a sign-in, and then you're already starting to play with the Pardot API, seeing the data and all the functions that it can provide. So now that and then also, this is actually a world first announcement, but we also are providing open source lab apps very soon. And this is really going to provide you a way that you have templates to get started and can move the starting line significantly. Matt here saw one that uses a custom component and the Pardot API as a baseline called Video for Email. And I have to say, this was coded by a Salesforce employee named Shreyan, and he did a really good job. And so Matt decided to just leverage this overall. And so let's just talk about what Matt's app was. It's the Pardot preference reminder. The goal is to remind users while they're receiving an email to help build trust, because sometimes the end users don't know why they're getting it. And this is just a little reminder that, oh, because you chose this preference. Well, it uses a lot of components, but a lot of these already were in the reference app that he decided to use. And so with that, let's go to code mode. And let me share here. All right, so this is the code of the email video main. It looks scary, but I'm going to walk you through it. So the first thing that I'm going to call out is that they're using name credentials. They have one, and ultimately what this does is it manages the authentication. So they have one for the demo org that goes to py.demo, and they have one for the production org. Then they used an auth provider, which these tie to, which then has you basically just have to put the information of your connected app, your consumer key and consumer secret of your connected app that you set up for this application. They also have an object that they created to store some configuration details for this object or for this application, the business unit ID and the Pardot environment variable, which sets the demo or production environment. And basically, this is what Matt's going to need as well. And so he really is just going to copy and rename everything. And just one note, if you are going to go down that path, just always remember to check the field names and the file names because both will need to be changed. Then also see they added a default record, which is a really smart idea because now they have a record that they know is going to be set up and can reference this in their code. So now let's jump into the Lightning Web Component portion. Lightning Web Components were designed so you can use the standard web technology languages that are available today. They have an SVG file here, which is ultimately just the icon. This JavaScript metadata sets up the panel for configuring the custom component. As you can see here, they have a custom redirect drop-down list that is using Apex code to call the Pardot API to pull the custom redirects. There's the JavaScript, which sets up the variables and functions that you want to do any modification of that field. And then they have the HTML, which is what's going to display in the custom component that you drop on the email. So then we go into the classes. There's a lot here, but I'll first jump into the custom redirect. This is ultimately to store the responses from the query to the Pardot API, and all they're pulling is the name and the tracked URL. Going into the helper function, they have the URL for this. It's combined with the information that is stored in the named credentials to be able to get the full piece. And because if you've never used named credentials, it's a little bit different. So this function get callout URL checks the environment, and then it uses the named credentials syntax, which is basically callout. If you have a namespace, add it there, then the name of the named credential, and then the rest of the URL. We also see a function called get Pardot settings, which is using that metadata record in order to get the business unit and environment variable. And then this is where the magic happens, which is actually calling the Pardot API. So you see they created a list of custom redirects to store the query response. They then they get the URL, they set up the request, they set up the header, they set the method to get, and then they call it. And what's great is they're just checking for the get status code 200, which previous Pardot APIs always return. But today, we only return it if you're getting that information back to make the coding experience easier. Now we see here that they have a parsing function in a wrapper class. So let's go take a look and see what they're doing. So basically, they're using a very simple method of parsing because if you can match the variable names to the response, then a JSON deserializer ultimately will do all the work for you. And since we return all of the custom redirect responses and actually all of our queries under a values tab, that's why they are setting it up this way. So now let's go look at the picker. So this is actually what is setting up the dynamic pick list that is being used in the custom component. And so if you extend the dynamic pick list, you have to have a variable called get, or have to have a function called get values. And so here is where they here is where they're making the call for the settings and the custom redirects. And then this function is simply adding that as options overall. They have some logic to determine what to display as the actual URL in that selection. But ultimately, this is what sets the drop-down list that's going to be used in that custom component. So basically, what Matt did is he took this and did a lot of name replacements. But for the most part, really, he had to just focus on the Lightning Web component. And so he changed the icon. He reduced it down to one field because you only need to select the email preference. He created the display for the custom component and then puts it puts that message there within that custom component overall. And then he did the classes. And so he created one for lists called Pardot Preference. And so he's grabbing the title, description, and is public. Then also in the helper class, he just changed the variable name to call the list endpoint, and really nothing else had to change in this code. So then we go to the picker, and again, getting the preferences, the settings, and then essentially just added some additional logic here to see if that list is public, because in Pardot, that's how you tell if it's a preference versus a regular list, and then adds them as options. Once he was coded and did some testing, he's ready to be able to deploy this to his org directly from Visual Studio, which is awesome, because if you're a coder, this is much easier to use because all the information's there versus actually having to go to the developer console. It's great for testing, but having to have a lot of different tabs and everything open. So let's go take a look and see this in action. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to my custom metadata. I went ahead and put my Pardot business unit ID in there. And then for name credentials, I'll show you what this looks like. They just have to edit it and then save it. And then it kicks off this process. I don't know why it didn't pick it up, but that's partially because I tend to be in a lot of Salesforce orgs throughout my day. So that's why it picked up that other one. And once I authenticate, I am now ready to test it out. So I go to the email content builder. I have an email that's really nice. I want to add this Pardot email preference in. I select it. I have two preferences, company news and product news. This is about the company, so I add it there. And now there's a little nice reminder of why they were receiving this email if there was any confusion with the customer. I save it, and now I can use it. And that's how Matt ultimately built his Pardot preference reminder application. And so let's go back to the presentation. And so now Matt has his application. And so now he wants to get it published and start making some revenue off of it. And so there's multiple partner benefits that you receive with Salesforce partnership. The first is you do have free resources. There's no obligation to get started in the partner community. This is because we want people to innovate. So you just have to sign up, get your dev org, and get started. But at some point, when you're serious to deliver, you'll move into full partnership. And that starts as you deploy your app. It goes through a world-class security review. The reason is, as Matt mentioned, these are really critical systems. You don't want to make a Matt oopsie in these scenarios because customers are depending on your app and also not impacting their day-to-day business. The other thing is Matt got an app exchange listing that is available to millions of Salesforce users across the world. This was huge exposure to him and really allowed people to discover what his offering was. And then lastly, you get a free partner org, or partner org comes with your partnership that allows you to be able to manage this application, but also help you sell and market your application overall. So it really gives you your one-stop kind of business shop for your application. And so that's how Matt became the App King. And if you are interested in playing around with this stuff, I have a few next steps for you. Number one, highly recommend taking the Lightning Web Component Getting Started trail. The reason is because it gives you a good overview of the Lightning Web Components, but more importantly, also gives you instructions of how to set up that developer environment that I just showed you. Next, I would urge you to please go to the Pardot developer documentation and start playing with all the stuff that we showed today. And then lastly, if you are interested in publishing an app or joining the partner community, check out the Pardot ISV starting guide. I also ask if you do have any feedback for me. I would love to hear what you thought of this session. And if you do play with our developer experience and our developer documentation, I would love to hear if you have any feedback for us. And since we're already a little bit past time, I'm also have put a placeholder on the Pardot community so that you can ask questions and I'll answer them throughout the rest of next week. Here's a bunch of resources that I'll also link. And I just want to say thank you for letting me come talk to you and that you too can be an app king. And I also want to thank all of our sponsors who allowed me to come speak with you and are putting on this wonderful event. So thank you so much. And I hope the rest of your Par Dreaming is excellent.
Thank you, Christopher. That was amazing. That was a lot of fun to watch. If you have any questions for Christopher, sorry, we're out of time, but like he said, you can reach out to him in the partner community, or you can use the chat functionality in the platform. Also, we're going to post this deck right here in the Par Dreaming platform on this same page on Monday. So you can come back and see the deck on Monday and access those links. So thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day at Par Dreaming. Bye.